So, it's that time of year again where something happens in the fan community that brings out all the no-life doomers who would rather grieve the inevitability of something ending rather than enjoy the ride as it goes. Now, I am very aware that I'm probably about a month or so late on this, but the main topic of this video is still going to stand, so I'm just going to keep going with it. The most recent example of this kind of controversy comes from the addition of Arcuid into the game. By this point, this shouldn't be any real news to anyone, but in case you are somehow unaware, Arcuid from the Tsukihime series is perhaps the biggest name drop that could have happened in FGO because she has been a highly requested character since FGO's inception, and brings into play the types, which are incredibly powerful beings, to put it bluntly. Arcuid herself is type Earth, and is an immortal vampire from the moon or something. People are doomsaying because she was the most anticipated character to have appear, and now here she is. So they must be running out of ideas, right? Well, newsflash for you, Chucklenuts, there are so many historical figures that could still be added and scenarios to be implemented into this game that the idea of dying in the next 2 years is near non-existent. This isn't even factoring in the fact that FGO has made $5.4 billion globally as of July 2021, when in reality it's a glorified Newgrounds game. People who truly believe that the well of concepts was run dry either got a 2.0 GPA or currently have a 2.0 GPA. But let's address the other facet of doomsaying that people will point to. Lost Belt 7. What we are witnessing from people is what is known as a synchronicity, and no, I'm not talking Yu-Gi-Oh! This is where things align in such a way that it seems like there is something there when in reality it's all coincidental, because you know, the universe is entirely made up of chaos. A famous example is the comparison between the life and death of Lincoln and JFK, but we're getting off track. People will point to the fact that Arcuid is released now alongside what is going to be the final Lost Belt and are essentially viewing these two things as the nuclear triad for FGO. The reality of the situation is that we have already been confirmed that there is a part 2 to the Lost Belt scenarios, so that leaves us with at minimum 3 more years of content, if not more. If you want a full breakdown of why Arc in particular is not a harbinger of doom, I recommend Toho Sniper's video, which I will link below, because he does an excellent job of dissuading all that madness. But all of this talk of the end of FGO has got me and others thinking, what will happen after Lost Belt 7? I'm assuming we'll have a similar situation with Solomon where we have a final showdown with the alien god, but then what's next? Well, there's a few ways it could go, realistically. Let's start by looking at what FGO as a story has been up until now. The first part of FGO was Mash's story. I could argue all day that she is the main character of part 1, but I think I'll make it quick and simple. The entire first part of FGO is about Mash finding out what it means to be human. It was her tale and being given a second chance and continuing to fight off the inevitability that she would die soon because of how she was created. She is given the opportunity to see and interact with different cultures across all of time and humanity, and learn from the people there what it means to them to be human. She is aware of what humanity was before the journey, but not what it means to be a human being. This is why her sacrifice in Solomon has such an impact on players who actually read the story. She did something that is nearly exclusive to humans, sacrificing herself to protect someone else. Not because she was told to or because of some instinctual obligation or anything like that. I will also say that this is part of the reason why she gets quote-unquote less interesting as we move into the Lost Belt. It's because she already had her major character arc. That said, she is still actively learning about other facets of humanity and how our world and the world of the Lost Belts are not just different, but also similar. The Lost Belts are the story of Gudiko, which is the canon MC. Yes, I do say that with full intention of causing someone to spurg out in the comments, but you know I'm right. Gudiko is a blank slate of a character in the main story because they, much like every other gacha game pro tag, need to be able to be easily projected onto by the player. FGO is somewhat unique in that there is a sublore that is kind of canon around what the two different MCs are actually like. We do see a significant growth of character in the decisions that we have to make as the players in the Lost Belts. Sure, we don't have any real say in what we do, but at the end of the day, fictional world or not, we all decided to keep going knowing full well what that meant. To be someone who actively destroys worlds to save our own does pose a moral quandary that should be thought about. Who among us actually has the right to decide which world is correct? The only alleviating factor for us is that we are told that these worlds were pruned away because they were dead ends, but then if whatever deciding force chooses that our timeline is a dead end as well, we will still fight for it. Right? That heavy question of morality is what hangs over our head whenever we enter into the Lost Belt scenarios. But what about after we have gotten through Gudiko's character arc? There is speculation that in order for there to be a next arc, someone in the main cast has to die, and many people think it's going to be either Mash or Gudiko. I don't personally agree with this assessment, and if anyone was going to get aced realistically, it would be Sion or Gordolf, but I don't think that's the route that we're going. I believe that there are 3 options for what FGO's story could become and who the focus character would be. These are Gordolf, Kadok, or Olga. Starting off with Gordolf, I believe that he is the least likely to actually have a main focus given his role in FGO currently. I doubt that they'd bring him along on every mission going forward, just given the way that he is written, but he as a character has gone from one that I found absolutely insufferable to one that I enjoy immensely. This is because he has gone from a stuck-up rich kid to a character that's actively doing everything he can to help those around him, while still maintaining the veneer of a rich kid. He is someone who thrives in the supporting role, so I would honestly prefer that he stayed there. However, we may see something with him being forced into a situation where he has to actually take up the proper role of a master, though again, I doubt it. Kadok is more likely than Gordolf, but of the three listed will probably either die in the final fight or become a central part of Chaldea but not explored outside of events and brief interludes in the story. I'm going to say this up top, I know nothing of what really goes on in Trom, outside of the fact that Don Quixote is there, and that Kadok is there, and that the class cards now have servant-type things. So, if he actually is already dead in Trom, good for him, I don't know anything about it. However, if we're going to get into what I really think is going to happen, I believe that he's going to die at the end of the Lost Belt scenarios and then be resummoned as a pseudo-servant or something. This has everything to do with the fact that he is still in possession of his light, that seems to be akin to a soul of all of the Cryptors now that they have been resurrected. Kadok has a lot of interesting aspects to his character that can still be built upon, such as being from a very low mage family but still managing to make the cut for Team A. In hindsight, Team A was really just full of powerful idiots, and that's really it, so maybe the bar at the application was just that low. While I do see him as a likely candidate for being a focal point to whatever comes next, the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that he's going to die in the final fight, and then that's just going to be kind of it. And that leaves us with Olga. I have my doubts that we're going to simply just kill Olga again as the alien god, and then she's just gone, because she's been awaiting a proper return to Chaldea for 7 years now, so I don't see them just throwing her away as the big bad. She'd become a summonable servant as a grand foreigner or something, to which I know that at the very least one of you immediately just went to the comment section to tell me that that's not possible because there is no such thing as a grand foreigner, but I'm going to genuinely ask you this question. Do you think that Fate cares about its own rules? Right. I could see her rejoining our ranks once again and becoming the director once more, or playing a role similar to Scion. But does this mean she will be the main focus? Well, it could. For that to happen, there would need to be a major plot point surrounding her in which it was absolutely necessary for her to come along. The easiest way to do that is to make the enemy something that she is familiar with, and that she needs to interact with in order for them to be defeated. And her growth arc would have to involve her learning in some way. Perhaps the best way to do a story like that, after whatever major fight occurs with her as the alien god, have her hint at knowing how to unleash humanity, then have a separate big bad shatter her memories and steal them, thus leading us to have to hunt them down. Then, as we travel with her, now as a servant, probably a pretender class, given to us as a gift and leveling similar to MASH, she slowly uncovers her memories, and we learn what is going on beyond the stars and what we need to do in order to fix everything. Her arc would involve processing the trauma of being thrown into the internal incinerator, and finding either a new love for humanity or internally fighting herself as to whether or not we are worthy of actually being spared as a species. To me, this is the most realistic direction that the story could take with the information that I currently have. Well, except for one other scenario that I don't really want to happen, but maybe what the future holds. Anyone who follows any Type Moon properties knows that Nasu very much enjoys throwing Easter eggs into his content. These include a reference to Olga appearing in a manga after being killed and being mentioned as the same Olga, and Scion being from Tsukihime. The latest addition to this type of storytelling comes to us in the form of MASH appearing in Melty Blood. It is hinted at in dialogue that her future will be worse than that of any dead apostle. Now, this can be one of three things in my mind, and I'll give an explanation for each. 1. MASH is actually going to become a beast of humanity and we're going to have to kill her. 2. She becomes a member of the Counterforce and is then subject to an eternity of saving the world. 3. It doesn't mean anything. The first reason has to do with her being the recipient of the Beast of Calamity's power to bring her back to life after she sacrificed herself for us in Solomon. It is very possible that through some outside forces meddling, the power of the beast that was granted to her to come back to life will re-emerge and MASH herself will become an enemy of humanity. This could lead us to the next phase of our quest and needing to find a way to reverse the process without killing her and traveling to various times and places to seek famous cures or artifacts that can help repress the beastification. This also opens the door to her having an Ortonox style skill set change that she can use and then piss off all the turbo nerds who are then forced to use her who dislike her because she now has a better kit than her OG self. The second is likely an event that will occur near the actual end of FGO's life or through a plot twist that I have in mind. This is that something happens to us as the MC, and in order to save us she has to make a contract with the world. This is of course a terrible idea and will only lead to future suffering, as it has for everyone else who has done so, save for Okita Alter who's just kind of vibing. This could go in a few different ways, namely Galahad may take her place once more, which would be admittedly a disappointing cop-out. Alternatively, she could split into two different versions of herself, much like Okita, and the part of her that was the beast becomes the Counterforce. Finally, and most realistically, is that she just joins the Counterforce and that's what wraps the game up. We'd probably have a section where her Counterforce version appears and saves us or something to hint at it going to happen, maybe a summoning campaign, but honestly, for my money, if this is the route that they go for, I will be incredibly disappointed. Do we really need her to join the Counterforce? Do we really want to play the exact same song and dance as Emiya again? If you're in the Discord, you know my thoughts on Emiya and that they are not very high, so seeing his lackluster story just happen again would just be frankly terrible. It's been done, let's just leave it alone and explore new territory, please. The third option would honestly be the funniest one. It meant nothing. It's just an old angry bastard being an old angry bastard to the new girl. They could just go in a completely alternate direction with the story than we could ever possibly perceive, and if so, I think I'd prefer that. It could be that all that he is hinting at is that we, the main character, will die because realistically, for Mash, that is the worst thing that could happen to her. Mash is the kind of girl to give everything if it means keeping us safe. So, to have failed as a shield is a fate worse than any other for her. Now, this of course means that Gudiko has to die, which would be one hell of a bold move by Lasagna to pull off, but not outside of the nonsense that Natsu likes to do. Having us die rather than having something happen to Mash would be the best way to see her grow as a character, but then again, that also means that the game is over. For now though, that's all I've got in terms of future story predictions. This video will be fun for me to come back to after the events of Lost Belt 7 and onward, just to see if I got anything right or not. Probably none of it, but hey, you know, I like this kind of stuff. As much doom and gloom as we see every now and then concerning this game, I think it's important to remember that history is infinite and is constantly being written. If they were ever truly hard up for ideas, the concept of going into the world of stories made manifest is always on the table. So, how about rather than crying about and wishing for the fall of FGO, why not just enjoy the ride while it goes, and if you really don't like it, just hop off now. But that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Do all the YouTube things to help spread the good word of the Goat Man. If there's anything that you would like me to cover, let me know down below. Check out my Twitch, my Twitter, and my Discord for significantly less structured content. But for now, keep your chin up. Peace.